Crysis is a game that I remember largely for the memes about its punishing graphical requirements, but I also remember having a lot of trouble actually getting to the end of the game, because the helicopters were all-powerful gods that would hunt you to the end of reality itself for daring to show your face.
Why are you running?
At least until you have a rocket launcher or a tank, and even then it takes 2 direct hits to take it down, because the developers are sustained by your mortal terror. Now, this game came out in 2007 and doesn't even have a 1080p resolution, but it had the audacity to say the optimal settings for my modern gaming desktop was only high rather than very high. Yeah, we'll see about that. Whilst the game starts off with a little cinematic showcase regarding what the nanosuit can do in combat, a huge chunk of the game, especially early on, relies heavily on stealth. Fighting openly, like the cinematic, is just not a good idea until much later when you have more powerful weapons on hand, and even then the suit can only take a couple of hits before you get hurt, so sticking to cover is still a must. I remember this changing in the second game to some level of outcry, as many preferred the stealthier gameplay of the first, but I preferred not being so easy to hurt while I'm supposedly wearing this cutting-edge military tech. I will admit I was mildly obsessed with the nanosuit that's so iconic to this series, spawning a number of thinly veiled original character do not steal moments in my early attempts at writing as a teenager, because we were all cringe as teenagers, none of you are free of sin. Like, the suit is genuinely one of the coolest things about Crysis, followed closely by the if only because I almost always find their implementation in stories interesting unless the writers really fumble it. The more we learn about both of these, however, the more horrifying and existentially threatening they become, but that will have to wait until later in the series, as there isn't a ton of information in the first game. With that said, it's time to develop a new fear of helicopters. Let's get started. We begin our story with the date August 7th, 2020, and the recording of an archaeological researcher called Dr. Helena Rosenthal, talking about something that was found on the Lingshang Islands. She warns that the North Koreans have assumed control of the island, rounded up civilians, and are blundering into a planet-changing discovery. The gunfire we hear in the background of this audio is probably nothing to do with the rounding up civilians part.
They're rounding up civilians outside!
Now, the Lingshang Islands are supposedly in the southern end of the Philippine Sea, close to the actual Philippines than it is to China or North Korea, but they appear to be populated by the Chinese based on the name, have a massive mineral wealth that is starting to modernize the island, the North Koreans have invaded it, and now the US military is getting involved with special forces. I'm sure this isn't remotely the geopolitical nightmare waiting to happen that I think it is. The mysterious discovery has the potential to change the future of the entire human race, prompting a secretive mission to locate and evacuate the researchers by a group of Special Forces soldiers wearing high-tech nanosuits. The suits enhance their physical capabilities to super soldier levels, allowing them to move faster, negate weapon sway and kick back with enhanced strength, withstand damage that would kill or incapacitate other soldiers, and worst of all for their enemies, vanish from sight with the use of cloaking technology. You'll also notice that the suits mimic the wearer's musculature and body shape to a degree that there can't possibly be anything else underneath, doubtless necessitating the need for, well, let's just call them life support systems and not dwell further on how the suits deal with basic bodily functions. 7 days after Dr. Rosenthal's message gets out, Major Lawrence Barnes, call-sign Prophet, addresses our team of besuited macho men about the mission to locate and evacuate. He stresses that the North Koreans can't know that we're here, shutting down a sly comment from Psycho, a British operator on loan from the SAS. Psycho immediately shuts up and makes an apologetic gesture, showing that he's more reasonable than his call sign or remark would suggest. The other members of the team are Aztec, Jester, and Nomad, the player. Prophet reiterates that they lost contact with Dr. Rosenthal's team a week ago, and 2 days ago a distress signal was picked up from the team's vessel, so we're here to find out if anyone is still alive and get them off the island without alerting the Koreans.
Honey, you've got a big storm coming.
Once the squad is on its way down, Aztec and Jester speculate on the real reason we're here, as Aztec rightly points out that it's strange for JSOC to send soldiers like them after archaeologists. Prophet reminds them to stay focused on the mission, and that they won't have any backup for a while, so they need to keep their wits about them. Just as we're about to land, however, the squad is scattered by a bright flying object, sending Nomad tumbling through the air without a chute. Thankfully he lands in water and his suit absorbs the impact, otherwise he'd be chunky salsa in a thermos flask right now. What's neat about this is if you're busy paying attention to the conversation going on between your squad mates, you don't see the thing that hits you. But if you already know that it's coming, you can look and see it, which is just neat. It's not something that just happens when you get to a certain altitude. There is a thing in the scene that you can see coming. Not that it saves you from getting scattered, of course. We get our suit back in order thanks to Prophet and begin regrouping with the rest of the squad, but it doesn't take long for something else to go catastrophically wrong. Not only did no one reach the LZ thanks to whatever just attacked us, but Aztec in particular ended up tangled in a tree. He's almost found by a Korean patrol, but...
Aztec, talk to me! Madre Santísima! Aztec, sound off now! No te mire mal! No te mire mal! No te mire mal! Prophet, help me! Nomad, Jester, get to him now! Go! Go!
We reach Aztec, only to find him nearly torn in half and very, very dead, surrounded by the bodies of the Korean patrol. So he might have been right about there being more to this mission than just rescuing some nerds. Before we move on, we learn how they've managed to keep this kind of technology out of enemy hands, because the suit can be remotely vaporized, destroying both it and the body of whoever was wearing it. It's pragmatic at best, but seeing this made me wonder if it was also a way of keeping the soldiers who wear these suits in line, as they would prove exceptionally dangerous if they decided to betray their country or allies. Turn traitor and the suit will melt, taking you with it. A nearby jamming array disrupts the team's connection to JSOC, prompting us, and Nomad, to go deal with it, and getting our first taste of what you'll be doing for most of the rest of the game.
Cloak engaged.
The North Koreans can't know we're here.
They won't even know what hit them.
Can it, Psycho?
Unsurprisingly, I found that I played the game quite differently as an adult than I did as a child, but it's nonetheless interesting to me to see the differences. I'm a lot more patient and cautious, and prefer to take everyone down as stealthily as I can, not that it stops me from being a troll on occasion. Case in point, you can use the cloak while driving, because technically you aren't moving, the car is, so the energy goes down very slowly, allowing you to freak out everyone who sees you because it looks like the car is driving itself. The alert level drops as soon as you leave, since no one actually saw you, they just saw a ghost car. After taking out a command post, we discover that there is a dangerous enemy commander in charge of this island occupation called General Kyong. Finally catching up with Prophet, we travel through a small gulch where we hear something moving around us, but we can't see it. As an aside, I really appreciate the creepiness of this. This isn't necessarily a horror game, but every time you encounter this particular part of it, you always feel on edge, as if you are no longer the predator stalking your prey, but suddenly under the hungry eye of a much bigger fish. It is a thus far unknown force that can quickly move unseen, and it's already killed one of your team. With Prophet insisting that we need to see for ourselves what he and Psycho has found, we arrive to find the archaeologist's boat just up here, and very frozen. Psycho throws a map to Prophet, who determines that the circled area must be the excavation site where we're supposed to locate and extract the VIPs, but Psycho calls it that this is more than just a mission to locate and extract and demands answers from him. Unfortunately, Prophet can't give us any, as the team is attacked by we're not entirely sure what yet, but I'm going to go with aliens. Like actual, for real aliens, and I absolutely would have taken this over what actually happened during 2020, but you know, it's fine, I guess.
It's got Jester!
We have to go! We have to go now!
The thing snatches Jester and we lose another teammate, prompting another demand for answers out of Prophet, who promises that he'd tell us if he knew, but he's just as in the dark about this thing as we are. You get the sense that Prophet is trying to keep a level head despite 2 casualties in the same day and the rampant oddities this island is producing. They can't act on what they don't know, but they can on what they do, so that's what they're going to focus on. With Jester vaporized, we move on to find a destroyed area covered in patches of ice and dead bodies. We move towards another outpost where we discover that our extraction target is being held in a school in the nearby village, and learn that the Koreans are tracking a fleet on their way to the island. Now, why would there be a whole US fleet sent on what was ostensibly a stealth mission? I wonder if it has anything to do with what our people found in the excavation area, or you know, the goddamn aliens.
What the hell?
Also, something uncomfortable xenophobia re North Koreans and the accents used when they speak English, but they're commie, so who cares, I guess. On our way to the village, we hear something making a lot of strange noises, and the ground shakes. I'm sure it's nothing to worry about. At the village, we rescue one of the excavation team members and discover that they may have woken something up. They initially thought that it might have been a dead civilization. You know, that ancient aliens type thing, but no, this is just straight up aliens. The lady we rescued explains to us that one of her members was torn up by something, presumably the same something that has killed at least 2 of our team members, and she's also CIA, because of course. Psycho stays behind to safely escort her while we head off to find Prophet. We begin heading towards the excavation site and meet up with Prophet again, who knew that the person we rescued is CIA, but didn't tell us because he didn't think it would make a difference. Which, I mean, yeah, I can see that it's not really crucial to what our job is here, but also, you're killing me, Prophet. Rosenthal's team is thought to have discovered an ancient civilization that predates humanity, an ancient alien civilization, and judging by how many people it's taken off the census so far, I don't think it's friendly. Following Prophet through some river tunnels, we emerge closer to the excavation, only for Prophet to immediately be taken by one of the creatures. He isn't immediately killed, but he is nonetheless dragged away, leaving Nomad high and dry. Our boy is contacted by Commander Strickland and is offered an extraction, but he insists that he can still complete the mission, so we continue. It's here that we really have to contend with the most annoying enemy in the game, the goddamn helicopters. Catch its attention? Good luck, loser, that thing is sticking to you like shit on Velcro.
Why are you running?
Now, while the cinematic at the beginning does a little bit of embellishment regarding how effective your suit's abilities are, I don't mean to make it sound as if it's useless. Stealth is very much encouraged, but once you get into the more built areas where there is some actual cover to be had, you can pretty effectively take down an entire group of enemies by yourself. Thankfully, I seem to be playing this better as an adult than when I was a dumb kid, so I did not incur the wrath of any helicopters yet. Taking out another jammer, we get the coordinates to the exact location of the excavation site and head over there to find Senior Rosenthal working under slight duress, given that the North Korean general is holding his daughter Helena Rosenthal hostage. There's a much larger site further up the mountain where the Koreans are trying to open up some kind of ancient temple, but Senior Rosenthal warns against this because he is very much convinced that these are high-tech, pre-humanity, capital A aliens. We don't know nearly enough about them to just be opening up ancient structures. Unfortunately for him, the specimen he was with starts to go haywire and releases a tech-frying blast that kills him and every other soldier in the room except for Nomad because his suit took the blast. It also froze everything. With Mr. Dad Rosenthal dead, we're ordered to head downriver and regroup, only for me to finally get in a fight with one of the helicopters, waste a bunch of ammunition and 1 rocket, as well as 2 shots of grenades, and eventually just running away because these things are made of adamantium, so it was better to just flee. I do not understand why they made the helicopters like this, but I have a sneaking suspicion that a dev somewhere just felt a shiver of pleasure at my agony. We finally reach the extraction point in an old graveyard, only to be attacked by North Korean soldiers who appear to be using our own technology against us despite all that full-body vaporizing we've been doing. For why? The commander is displeased to hear this, but Nomad remarks that the suits look like cheap knockoffs if it's any comfort. En route to our next mission, there's a bit of banter between the remaining members of the team, Psycho and Nomad, and the regular soldiers who are on board, revealing that the nanosuit soldiers are rare and extremely expensive. One of the Marines jokes that one day he'll have his own supersuit and get to kick Psycho's ass only to immediately perish the very second he walks off the VTOL. Incredible. With North Korea and America now openly fighting over this island, we ignore the geopolitical ramifications of this very aggressive debate and land in a hot zone to fight our way through. Of course, only the first part of this is a fight, and the rest of it is me spending most of the time crawling through the undergrowth, desperately trying to avoid the attention of two separate helicopters, because again, to call back to that cinematic showcase of our abilities a lot of the time, it is just better for you to very much take your time, be patient, take out only one target at a time, otherwise you can look forward to being turned into a walking block of Swiss cheese.
One eternity later.
Anyway, after taking out 2 AA guns and discovering a cache of explosives, Nomad and Psycho take out the jamming array on a nearby cruiser, effectively clearing the way for the rest of the American forces to push forward. We then follow a tank convoy to the nearby mountain, which seems to be going through some changes if the pieces falling off of it and revealing alien technology underneath is anything to go by, but I'm sure it's nothing to worry about. As you traverse the area, it continues to cause tremors and landslides, which cause you to earn some level of alertness and threats from enemies, even though you're not the one causing that, but okay. One of the things that is timeless about this game is the fact that the physics sometimes decide to just do things, such as wrecked cars just bouncing to infinity, helicopter wreckage spinning like a rotisserie chicken on speed, and enemy guns getting stuck in walls then rattling like the world's worst maraca. Anyway, we secure a landing zone right outside the mine where the hostages were being held and make our way inside after one of the tanks decides to become an astronaut. Upon entering the mine, Commander Strickland loses video feed on Nomad's armor and things get progressively spooky sounding until we eventually find Helena Rosenthal and General Kyong. Unfortunately, Nomad forgot to be stealthy and gets jumped by 2 Korean soldiers wearing nanosuits, dragging him over to their commander. The general is unwilling to listen to Helena's warnings about opening the supposed temple and quite rightly calls her on trying to play it off as just a temple, pointing out that it's obviously more than that and the CIA and the US military would not be so fucking interested in it if it was just a temple. He then kills one of the engineers working on the project because we need to know that he's a bad guy and blows open the doors. This results in a power surge that kills the 2 soldiers holding us, and we fight the general, which amounted to me hiding until I had a shotgun and then burying 4 rounds in his back because I'm a true honorable American soldier. We try to extract Helena only for the cave to block her escape, and Helena is the only one who can actually get out thanks to some risky flying, and Nomad is left to find another way out, which just so happens to be through the alien structure, and this is where the game gets interesting. Nomad proceeds into the alien structure and loses communication to the outside, so he tries to describe what he sees, and eventually loses gravity using his suit's thrusters to navigate his way through. He sees one of the creatures that took profit, and nothing is attacking him yet, at least until he traverses deeper into the structure and encounters the Ceph. Honest to God, ancient aliens. And unfortunately, they are not friendly.
Whatever that was, it's dead now.
So First Contact is going great. And I feel the urge to once again remind you that this game came out in 2007. As we navigate through the structure, we see that the aliens are collecting objects from outside and analyzing them, and because of the massive military presence, a lot of those objects are weapons related, which handily allows us to restock and give them a hands-on demonstration of what these objects are. It's genuinely fascinating to move around the ship looking at everything, just make sure not to get caught in the alien machinery like a dingus like I did.
It was at this moment that he knew. He fucked up.
After giving the aliens a thorough welcome to Earth treatment, we finally escape, and Nomad is almost rescued, only for the aliens to finally burst out of the ship en masse, turning the local area into a snow globe. I then experienced perfect timing when Strickland was all, "Boy, it sure is a miracle that you're alive," only for Nomad to immediately get beamed in the head with a boulder and die instantly.
The whole mountain's encased in some kind of energy sphere. It's a miracle you're still alive.
We proceed to haul ass out of there and try to find a group of Marines that Strickland wants us to regroup with, but we find them very much frozen, along with everything else in this pocket hellscape. We're jumped by a bunch of aliens, and it almost looks like Nomad is about to be overwhelmed, if not for Prophet to suddenly appear with a steel chair, very much alive, albeit with a malfunctioning nanosuit. Fighting off waves of aliens together, we proceed to escort him down the mountain because his suit is losing power, and if we don't get him out of here soon, he's going to freeze to death right after we just found him. Now, there are big flying aliens that are a little annoying to fight, but you can shoot them down with shotguns and incendiary ammunition, and if the game had sent the Korean helicopters after me in the number that they send these things, I would be dead, so who's higher on the Kardashev scale now? Kind of undercuts the threat they might pose when basic human technology in the shape of a f***ing helicopter put more fear of God in me than the advanced alien tech flyers. After escorting Prophet to multiple heat sources so he doesn't perish of hypothermia, we finally reach the edge of the sphere surrounding the alien structure, which is what is turning everything all inhospitable, and we get an exact temperature when one of the Marines asked if anyone else survived.
It's 200 below inside that thing. Everything's dead.
Now, to put this in context, the lowest natural temperature directly recorded on Earth at ground level was in 1983 Antarctica at minus 89.2 centigrade, or minus 128.6 Fahrenheit. And since this is an American game, I'm going to assume Prophet meant negative 200 Fahrenheit, which means negative 128 Celsius. This is beyond the point where pure ethanol will freeze. Hell, it's 164 degrees beyond the point where antifreeze can't keep up and succumbs to the inevitable embrace of a cold, icy death. And I'm not getting into whether or not the fires we escort Prophet to should have even been possible, because the freezing point of gasoline is anywhere between minus 40 and minus 100 Fahrenheit, and it will make my head hurt, so moving on. We regroup with a bunch of surviving Marines, fight off waves of enemies, hop into some jeeps and try to get away, but really only Prophet and Nomad managed to get away alive thanks to plot armor. The VTOL that took Helena Rosenthal out of danger is shot down in front of us, prompting the surviving soldiers to rescue her and get to the evac. While Prophet goes with her, Nomad rendezvous with Strickland downriver where the wounded are being lifted out. In order to buy time for them, we fight through waves of more enemies using an AA gun, all the while a much larger alien walker stomps towards us, seemingly impervious to our attacks. Thankfully, Strickland tells Nomad to get the hell out of there at the last moment and stays with those left to fight the walker, claiming that the walker belongs to him, he's a Marine and he'll walk on water if he has to, and he'll draw its fire.
Hold tight! Strickland!
While getting flown out of there, the pilot of Nomad's transport is shot, forcing him to fly it himself because no one else has a lick of flight training, and he kind of does. This is the most nerve-inducing part of the game, not because the flying is bad, but because the vehicle is easily damaged and you can blow up very quickly if you aren't careful. Nonetheless, we manage to get to the carrier where Psycho has also managed to escape the island alive, and he welcomes Nomad back, saying he has a little souvenir for him. It's not explained how the hell he managed to take down and catch a scout vessel from the aliens, at least not until the DLC Warhead, where it's revealed that he didn't, technically. There was plenty of fighting to be had, but the thing was already boxed up and ready to ship. It's just that the Koreans had it first, and Psycho relieved them of it. It briefly animates when it's struck by lightning, but Psycho takes care of that. Called down to the Combat Direction Center, or CDC, by Admiral Morrison, we discover that the military has clearance for a nuclear assault on the alien structure, which worries Helena immensely, as we have no idea what exactly this energy-eating alien technology will do when we hit them with nuclear energy. We also learned from Morrison that the alien structure fired a high-frequency signal into space 4 days ago, pointed at a star in the M33 galaxy, which the Admiral states is 4 million light-years away. Now, I was curious, and I found that there is a real galaxy called M33, Messier 33, or the Triangulum Galaxy, which is actually 2.73 million light-years away from Earth, and you might think, Brad Morgan, this must have been discovered after Crysis came out. We're discovering new galaxies all the time. Which is true, but the earliest probable discovery of M33 was in 1654, so... That's not to say that they can't change details to suit the science fiction narrative, I just really looked it up for fun because I think space is neat. Admiral Hardcase doesn't give a single solitary shit what the aliens are or where they're from, and only sees them as a threat, which his extremely myopic and militarized worldview has decided should be dealt with by nukes, despite the fact that, again, these things absorb energy. We're dismissed and regroup with Prophet, Helena, and Psycho in the armory, where Prophet is getting his suit fixed and upgraded because he plans to go back to the island with his jury-rigged alien chain gun. We can assume he means to fight the aliens inside their structures. One of the upgrades mentioned was his suit's hydro thrusters, which is what helped Nomad navigate the lack of gravity. Climbing into the cradle so the science nerds can retrieve the data Nomad collected on the inside, Helena gets the suit tuned so that it can be used to fire a weaponized signal that will cause the aliens to overload. Neat! Prophet takes off before this can finish, however, arguing that he doesn't care what the Admiral plans to do because the nukes won't even leave a scratch. This is definitely going to end well for us. Once the signal upgrade is done, Helena is called to the bridge, and once she's out of the room, the unnamed scientist man who was helping her with our suit decides to tell us,
"Pretty girl. Not many of those in my field. If I were 10 years younger, I'd..."
"Sir, you are lucky that I'm trapped in this suit cradle right now, or I would throw you over the side of the ship with concrete shoes." Anyway, he's thankfully interrupted by someone bringing an experimental weapon into the lab that fires small tactical nukes, which he is just going to run tests on and puts away in easy reach. I'm sure that's just set dressing and won't be a tool that will help us later. We are finally freed from the cradle, although not to snap this man's neck, and leave for the bridge. On our way there, we overhear Admiral Morrison confirm that the White House has given the go-ahead to perform a limited nuclear strike on the island. This is definitely going to go well and won't prove at all that you should actually, I don't know, explore all your options, especially when science nerds are telling you there's a less recklessly destructive way to deal with the problem. But no, why would you listen to scientists? Predictably, the nuke fires, the aliens get even stronger, the snow globe expands, and we need to defend the ship from an armada of flyers.
Sir, we've got multiple contacts inbound. 8. No, 12. Oh, shit! Everybody down!
So we fight on the flight deck until there are no enemies left, and take a lift down to a breach in the nuclear power reactor. After clearing it of enemies, we end up manually lowering faulty control rods and Nomad's life expectancy, which killed me the first time because I didn't use strength mode quickly enough. At least we get confirmation that our special suit signal can indeed overload alien technology. Nomad is called back to the flight deck by Admiral Morrison, but before we get there, we see him get his guts rearranged by one of the aliens. Sucks to suck, Admiral. Finally emerging back onto the flight deck, we end up fighting one of the big walkers that took out Strickland by staying close enough that Helena's signal weapon weakens it to our attacks. And just as we think we're about to get off this dying ship, an absolutely massive thing emerges from the sea. The same thing we saw earlier if you looked off the balcony in time to see a swell of something in the water just casually crash through another cruiser, destroying it like tissue paper. Now, for being a 16-year-old game, there are going to be various issues trying to run this thing on current operating systems, and while I was thankfully spared of any serious issues, it seems like the game was saving all the technical fuckery for this last fight, as trying to save in the middle of it caused the game to crash. Trying to load that save file crashed the game as well. I didn't even actually get to try and load the save file. I went to load any file, and as soon as the game tried to bring up the files, it simply chose death. So in the hopes that it was just a case of that particular save file being cursed for whatever reason, I dug through the game folders until I found where the save games are and deleted the most recent one, which allowed me to finally load into the game again. It turns out, however, that the last boss fight is the most crash-prone area of the game, so not only was I dying multiple times because this boss fight is hell on earth, but the game was also giving up on life constantly until I forced it to run in compatibility mode, which marginally saved the experience for me. We finally kill the airship after being hounded multiple times by Helena and Psycho to kill it, as if that isn't what we've been trying to do for the last hour. Is what I would say if my recording software had actually captured anything, but unfortunately, because I did some messing around getting it to play in compatibility mode, my recording software just didn't recognize it as the thing that I wanted to capture, and because of the resolution that I was playing at, it pushed things on my second monitor to the side, and I couldn't see that it wasn't recording what I wanted it to, so here is an artistic rendition of what happened, because I am not doing that fucking boss fight again. The destruction of the airship causes a vortex that almost sucks Helena to her death, but it calms down enough for the team to decide that they know how to fight this, so they're going to go back. They disregard the reinforcement fleet from Japan, and Psycho reveals that Prophet is still alive and kicking inside the snow globe, so our intrepid team flies off to meet up with him, and that is where we end. Overall, I did enjoy returning to Crysis because, as is the case with the last few games I've done on this channel, it's been a while since I played them. I remembered the aliens, but not the big frozen sphere of death or the fight at the end, although not remembering the latter was probably an intentional suppression on my part. From what I remember, the sequel does make you more directly combative, even though the stealth is still there, but the first game is very much more focused on the stealth aspect of it, and there is a satisfaction to take in sneaking your way around and not even necessarily avoiding fights, although you absolutely can avoid fights if you want to, but the satisfaction gained from taking out your opponents one by one as you sneak around them, and they keep getting more and more frustrated and scared, it's just good gameplay. I'd compare it to the Far Cry games, at least the later ones anyway, where clearing out camps can be almost therapeutic, like trimming a rosebush, which is definitely something to say if you want to sound like a serial killer. Obviously there is a very hurrah military theme to this because you are playing as a soldier boy doing secret soldier stuff while murdering your way through a countless number of North Korean soldiers, but it's North Korea, so who cares, obviously, even though you should care about making things better for your fellow human. But yeah, from what I remember, the second game definitely goes more into story stuff, while the first game was far more focused on the gameplay, which isn't a bad thing, but depending on what you enjoyed most, it can make or break the rest of the series. Personally, because I enjoyed the bits and pieces of story we got in the first game, I was okay with the direction the second game took, and we'll see how that holds up as I replay it. Speaking of holding up, as I mentioned before, Crysis held up remarkably well. There was a reason this game got memed to hell and back about how taxing it was on everyone's machines. If you keep in mind that Mass Effect, Overlord, Portal, Assassin's Creed, The Witcher, all of these came out in 2007, as well as Crysis. Does it look kinda janky and out of date now? Yeah, but again, it held up much better than other games from this era. However, in some respects, it didn't hold up quite as well, as it's still technically impressive, but photorealistic graphics are always going to stagnate. Crysis was just the most forward at the time, so it had more of a tail on its graphical life, whereas things like Team Fortress 2, which also came out in 2007, pretty solidly survived to this day, mostly. All that being said, it feels to me as if all the memes about its graphics completely overshadowed the actual game itself, to the point where people who didn't play games used it as a benchmarking tool for their computers. Putting my snark about military stuff aside, you start off with the assumption that you are a powerful super soldier capable of dealing with anything, and sure, there might be something else going on here, but you saw the cinematic showcase, this is going to be a fun action romp through the jungle. And almost immediately the game hits you with a cold shock to the system in the form of a teammate getting butchered by an unknown enemy, something even the Koreans weren't aware of and weren't spared by, something that left your fellow soldier pleading and crying in pure terror before his death. Every time that force shows up again, it is to either unsettle you or snatch another member of your team away until a squad of 5 is reduced to 2. And this was such an effective method of keeping you from getting too comfortable, because outside tanks and helicopters, the Korean enemies just can't compare in threat level. They aren't the ones taking out your team. The threat is diminished somewhat once you get your hands on a Gauss rifle, a mass driver weapon that launches projectiles many times faster than the speed of sound using electromagnets, and I will restrain myself from getting into the fact that the 8 megajoule batteries Crysis 2 describes its handheld railgun using is well below the 25 megajoules a second to fire the kind of railguns we're just developing today, but that's not the point. The point is that for all the graphical memes Crysis justified, it was engaging enough as an action-style sandbox, and as a story about humans encountering something much, much higher on the Kardashev scale than them. But we'll get into that as the series progresses. Thank you for watching to the end. I look forward to revisiting the sequel and also the third game, which I never got around to playing actually, so that will be new to me. But as per the channel poll, the next video will be Overlord 2 followed by Prototype 2. Although considering that Halloween is around the corner, there may be a surprise in the works for Spooky Month. We'll see how it works out. Special shoutouts to my supporters on Patreon who are all very handsome people, and if you would like to become a patron yourself, just follow the link in the description. Thank you for watching, don't forget to drink your water, take your medication, be kind to yourselves, and I will see you all next time.